All right, Cheshire Bird, kick it off. In this episode, we chat with Michael, a jewellery and gift maker here at our 1853 Studios and Gallery in Oldham. What I love about sitting down to chat with someone is you just don't know where the conversation is going to go, and this is the perfect example. There's so much more to what Michael does than the simple act of creating special items. It goes much, much deeper than that. Welcome to our art podcast.
Our vibe, our sass, our art podcast.
Hello, I'm Luca, and I'm here with our Matt.
Hello.
And our Michael.
Hello.
Today we're chatting to Michael of Studio 7 Mil 1. We have actually been having a little bit of banter just before we started here, saying that we've got Lancashire,
That's me,
Yorkshire,
Aye.
and what they said, Cheshire for me,
Cheshire,
which
yeah.
is not the case. Just to be fully clear, Stockport is Greater Manchester. I mean, it was Cheshire, to be fair, I suppose.
Yeah, well,
but
Oldham's
everything
not
was
technically
everything.
in Lancashire anymore either, but...
It is Lancashire, though, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not technically anymore.
No.
But...
All right, so yeah, we've got three edges, three sides of the pond here, coming together and having a chat. So, Michael, have you had a nice day?
I've had a really good day. Yeah.
Tell me about your day, just for a minute.
Day. Well, I had no intention of coming into the studio. Got up, saw the sun, and I thought, I've got to. So I decided to come down, and I got quite a lot of stuff done that was in my head for a few weeks, but I never got really in the mood to do it. I just continued to do, because of the website that I'm building, I became very one-tracked on that and building it, and I just thought, no, I need a creative day. And the stuff that I've done today is blown me out of the water, which I don't usually say I'm very critical of what I do, but I love what I've done, to the extent that I'm actually taking it home to show my wife.
Oh,
to get
what
feedback.
a nice day to be talking to you then.
Great.
It's so funny how sometimes you wake up and you actually are in the mood to be creative, because sometimes I can have the same feeling where it's like I'll wake up and I'll feel super creative and it's just that feeling, and then days when I've planned to come in, I won't feel it. Like, I'll really not be feeling it, and then you're screwed, aren't you, if you've planned it?
I'm very much a night person as well. So you'll see on the cameras, I'll sort of turn up at 11 o'clock at night. I'll sat there and my wife will say, I'm going to bed, and I think, yeah, I've just woke up. In my head, I've woke up. I'm not at work tomorrow, so I'll go down for an hour. 4 hours later, or sometimes the birds are singing, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I've gone a bit long. But you do, because it's so cathartic when you come here. I've said this right from the very beginning. I've been here from one of the very first studios, and there's two things that happen for me. One is my grandchildren. Doesn't matter what's going on at home, doesn't matter what's going on at work, how stressed you are. The grandkids walk in, throw their arms around you, 5-year-old and 12-year-old, even at 12-year-old, everything just melts. As soon as I walk into these studios, I don't even need to get past the main doors. When I come out of this lift, everything just disappears. And it always has done. Don't matter what mood I'm in or how stressed I am, I can walk in and just, and it just goes. I'll lock my door and away I go. And I can be there for half an hour if I need to be, or I can be there for 12 hours.
Oh.
And on my last day from work, because fortunately I passed the studios on my way home, I'll even say, I'll just call in to grab so-and-so, because I know I've had a really bad day at work, and I'll call in, I'll pick up a couple of things, get a quick drink of coffee or whatever, and then I'll set myself home, and that just, it grounds me.
That's
to the
gorgeous.
extent of, for my weekend, then I've got a good start before I get them the next day, because I've had that half an hour or whatever the night before here.
So, Michael, what do you do? What happens in the studio when you're here?
I spoke to one of the other people here, Sean, who's a great guy, because my head tends to go a million miles an hour, and I want to do a lot of different things. So what I've done is I've learnt to focus with his help. I make memorial gifts because of the job that I do and because of personal circumstances. It was something that I wanted to do that made a difference. So rather than just doing one thing, I do lots of different things. So I'll make silver jewellery, I'll make plaques, I'll make things for gardens that light up, that have either ashes in or hair or none at all. And it's just something that people feel closer to their either person or pets, because we always say this pets can be more of a family to people than family. So I can say quite clearly that when our hamster died, my wife was absolutely devastated, and she sat there and cried. I'm like, right? And she's going, I know, but it's a hamster and I get it, but she was absolutely heartbroken. And, so everybody deals with things differently. I'm one of these that don't shy away from it. And I bring up the conversation because I think the more you have that conversation with people, it becomes easier for people to understand. The more they understand, I won't say it's easier to deal with, but they understand that other people feel the same way, but most people avoid talking about it. And I think that's the thing.
How did you get into that then? Have you always been creative? Where did you learn that skill set?
I've been a photographer for 30 years, wedding photographer, kids. I went to Canada for 5 months, photographed racehorses and show dogs. And when I came back, I'll tell you a funny story in a second about Rachel. And you'll like this. So I told her I was a photographer and I photographed horses and dogs, and spoke to her and her husband and got the keys and everything else. And then she came up to me with a very puzzled look on her face. And I said, "What's up?" She went, "I don't know if you can have the studio." So I said, "Why?" I'm only doing portraits and things. She went, "But we don't know how you're going to get horses through that lift." And I went, "Sorry." She said, "You do horse portraits?" I said, "Jane Fields." She said, "Well, I thought you were going to be bringing the horses into the studio."
Oh, right.
It's not Blue Peter.
No. And that's the reason why I got it, because wonderful England rains 748 days a year. So I got the studio simply because of the weather.
Yeah.
Because then I had a consistent thing. Now, then it came sort of 3 years later, we had COVID. And unfortunately, my wife's mum and dad had been isolated for a year. And his sister passed away, and they went to the funeral. This lady came up to them, random lady hugged them. Within 5 days, her mum was in hospital. We got a phone call. She's not going to last the night. She died I sat in the car park for 14 hours. My wife sat there for 18 hours till she died. The day that she died, they brought her dad in. He got it as well. And she sat with him for 6 days until he died. So I said, "I don't want anybody in my studio." I just I backtracked and said, I need to get away from it all. I had a bit of a breakdown with it. Stayed out of work for 6 months. Work were fantastic. They helped me massively. And that's what put me into the job that I do now. But it was something that I needed to process it. And I've always been a creative person. It's the sticky back plastic and watching kids programs, Why Don't You? And everything was plastic and glue, and yeah, I've always been like that. My sister's just the same. I'm a stationery addict, and I admit it. And so I just sort of started playing about with stuff, and I'm like, this is really good. And someone said, "Oh, I like that," and it just sort of developed. I started to make things, and the more I made, the more I enjoyed it. But then I said, this is nice, but I'm making things for the financial gain to cover what I'm not making the photography, which was wrong. So I just stopped and said, right, I need to find something that I want to do. So I started making a couple of things for my wife, and a couple of people said, "Oh, I like that. Can you do one for me?" It was literally just key rings with the photographs in and of great grandparents and stuff that they wanted to keep. So I sort of built it from there. Then I started making the bracelets, but actually making the beads. So you can put the ashes in the beads and then make everything. But we nicknamed my wife Magpie, because if it sparkles, she takes it. So she genuinely is a magpie. And you tend to find that so many people love things that sparkle. So you tend to find that most of the stuff that I do sparkles. So it's very much that side of it. And I'll do a variation because I'm not one that's can do the same thing repetitively. I like to look at and challenge myself all the time. So that's the good side of it. And although it might seem like a morbid subject, it's not, because you get such a great response from people.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They'll say, "Oh, I've got it for my son because so happened." Right, tell me about it. Talk about him. And most people, yeah, of course you can. Tell me about him.
Yeah.
Because there's no sort of wall there between you both. And it's nice to hear these stories. And I've always said, somebody hasn't passed away until the last person's forgot them, or the last person's gone. So we need to keep these memories up. So I just see it as a very positive thing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I find it really interesting how chains of events make things connect, make the dots connect. Because just before we started recording, you were telling us about what you do for your job, and then you just touched on then the fact that you had these skills and these interests, and then you had these personal bereavements within your family, and then that connected to your job. So everything seems to be connected now. Tell us about your job and how that came, how that changed, or what you do now as a result of what happened.
Yeah.
So I used to I worked for a telecommunications company, and I used to oversee, during lockdown, there's 5,000 agents. There was 22 of us that if things didn't get fixed, couldn't do things, it would come to us. We would look outside the box and sort it out, or we'd support them. When that finished and lockdown finished, they said, well, we can't give you that now, but because of your situation, we'd like you to go into the bereavement team and work with people where they've lost their families. And they're like, no, thank you. And they're like, no. I said, no, thank you. I'm all right, thank you. And I sort of straight away put a wall up. And they said, right, okay, we think you'd be really good at it. Do me a favour. You know me. And this was my manager, and said, look, try it for 2 weeks. If you don't like it, we'll find a job for you. We'll create something, because we know that you'll just take anything on. Well, that's what you do, because if you don't, then you stood still. And when you stood still, you get bored. So I said, right, I'll try it for 2 weeks. I'll prove you wrong. After 2 weeks, I ain't doing it anymore. And he just smiled and walked away. Came back to me 2 weeks later and said, well, I went, you take me out of this job, I swear I'll find you. And they were like, right. I said, no, seriously. You can take me out in the box. I said, do not. He said, I knew. He said, because you've got compassion for people. I said, I can be very direct as well. So I can split the two things between the job itself and the person. So you can bring them back in if you need to, and it's having a discussion. So whether it's a 5-minute discussion or in some cases 2.5 hours, there's no time limit to what I do. It's just a case of you do what you need to do. We leave you to do what you need to do for that customer's family to make sure that everything's right. And that's, very few companies are like that.
Yeah, this is quite a unique story, I'd say.
There's 2 companies that do this.
So you work for a company that, and if someone passes away and they have a subscription, for example, and it needs tying up, dealing with whatever it is, you're the person who deals with the people's family or next of kin or whoever,
or the solicitor or the power of attorney. Or I
just find it amazing how where you find threads of humanity. You don't expect to find them. I bet could tell some stories about some conversations that you've had. In effect, you're taking on another role of compassion and counselling, and it's just what that person needs at that moment. Does that kind of thing happen?
Absolutely, on a regular basis, more than you would understand, and also more than you'd expect. And it tends to be men rather than women.
Right.
Women I will sit down and say, right, okay, you've got a list, and they'll say, how do you know? Well, you've got a list of people to ring. Yeah. Right, okay. What I need you to do for me is ring 2 people, tick them off the list. When you finish those 2 people, you go get a cup of tea, cup of coffee, you walk around the garden, you come back, you give it 10 minutes, and they're like, right. I said, because you get the brain fog. I've had so many people ring me and say, oh, I spoke to you 2 days ago. Because you've forgotten that you've done that, because you're on automatic mode. And I've had other people where they're going through it might have happened 2 years ago, and they've forgotten to call us. So they'll ring up because they need to do something with the accountant. So we need to speak to the account holder, and they'll just burst in tears. And it's the first time they've actually said they died.
Yeah.
Or it's the ringing for the son because the son got killed in a car crash the day before, and they're ringing us. It's like, why are you ringing me for? Well, I need to do it. Right, okay. Let's get it sorted. And then what I'll do is, and a few people, what I've done is I've actually rung them back a week later to see how they are.
Wow.
Because you can tell emotionally they're not coping. Emotionally, they don't have the family support around. I'm also part of another group where it's the same principle. During COVID, we found a lot of people would never see anybody from day to day because of lockdown. So they saw the person delivering the food, and that was it. Once a fortnight, and they drop it at the door. So we have a thing where now, when I've spoken to this lady for over 2 years, she's 87. She lives in a field in Wales. It's not a field, but it's a beautiful farm. A beautiful farm with a sheepdog. The dog's 19 years old.
Wow.
She has no family, no friends. She can't go out, and she says to me, on a Saturday, she'll say to herself, only three more days before Michael calls. And I speak to her once a week for an hour. We changed the world. She used to be a policewoman, and she was she can come out with some stories that make my hair curl, and I've got no hair. But we can have that conversation. And at first she was very sort of, I want to speak to a man, I don't want to speak to a woman. Right, okay, she's always worked with men. And she just looks forward to that every week, and it's something that we now do, and we incorporate. There's over 700 people do this now because there's so many people that are lonely, that have nobody, and you say, oh, I haven't seen anybody for a few days. She'd not seen anybody for 8 months. Literally nobody. God. She had a TV, and what happened is we put them into a position of people say, oh, your TV's not important. It is for some people.
Yeah.
It's their lifeline because the soaps and everything else, they go into that world because there is nothing else. And if their TV's not working for a month or 3 weeks or 2 weeks, they have nothing.
Yeah.
And they just sat looking at four walls. Luckily, she's got a dog. So, and the dog's, I mean, bless her, she tells me the dog plays chess. And she won't play chess with the dog anymore because the dog always wins. Yeah. And she won't play drafts because he can't put the top one on the top and it pushes off when he pushes it. So I did quite a lot on Alzheimer's and things as well. So I did a lot of courses and find out how people's minds work, which is very, very interesting. And certain things that they do, certain patterns that they have, and why, and how they see things. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm doing more the psychological side of it for people because I do speak to people that have got severe mental health issues, but they can look after their account because they've got nobody else to do it for them. Yeah. And when you sit there for an hour and 45 minutes to press pause and unpause on your remote for your TV, and it takes an hour and 45 minutes for them to get used to it, I can have that patience, but I don't have patience for the people that are angry and nasty for no reason. So there's two sides to it.
You said before we started recording as well that sort of like sometimes what's important to you about this studio space that you have here is that you can just be on your own because you have all these conversations all day, and so sometimes, and also, so it'd be nice for you to talk a bit more about that as well, and about how this studio plays a role in that. But also, I find it so interesting that your creative practice feeds so much into your day job. Like often artists and creatives and stuff often have like a side job that sustains them because of the nature of working in the creative industries. But it's very interesting to find in your case that actually the two sort of support one another or maybe drive each other.
They do, very much so, yes. And I think as well, because of being here for so long, being here from the beginning, the people that I've met here as well, everybody tends to have their own. They've all obviously everyone's got their own studio. Everyone has their own little bubble that they live in. But there's not once that I've ever not knocked on somebody's studio door and say, "How are you? Are you having a brew?" And they go, yeah, absolutely, come on. And they'll take that 10 minutes to sit and have a chat with you about whatever. It could be something really deep and meaningful. It could be just say, "Have a look at that and what do you think? Have you tried this?" Or vice versa. And people are very, very supportive. I've never not had that experience here. And I think when I've been at other studios, you go in, you lock yourself away and that's it, and you don't see anybody. And I think for here, we might need to, sit and have half an hour lunch or a meeting. Yeah. And it's nice to show that other people have the same, even though you do completely different things. And there's people in here I've seen and I've spoken to loads of times, haven't got a clue what they do. And I've never asked, and they've not asked me, but we've always sort of said hello and everything else. And it's just a positive place to be. So that's the thing for me. And I think that combined with my job, you're right. I think they do go hand in hand in the sense that when I mention it at work and on the phone, sometimes it'll slip up and I go, "Oh, I make memorial. Can I have your website?" "No." And I go, "Well, what do you mean? No. And work have said, "Yeah, of course you can." "No, I'm not." Right. Because it feels like I'm touting for business. Yeah. And for me, emotionally, no, I'm all right, thanks. It's not that I wouldn't appreciate it. And but we really want to see it. That's fine. I understand that. But you're in an emotional position at the moment where I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's nice that I can walk away from that because that's the thing when you're speaking to people. Families are great when it comes to that kind of position, but we all know that when somebody passes away, that family then can turn on each other. So I think it's nice to have an outlet from somebody else that has no involvement. I can't make assumptions. It's not my business to do that, and it's nice not to have to, because you don't know what's going on. You don't, and it's not my business, so I can cut myself off from that and be very sort of proactive towards them without being judgmental. And I think that's the thing that I enjoy doing the most, because I can say, "Well, have you tried this?" or "What about that?" And it's to benefit them, not something that feeds me.
Yeah. I know you love what you do because you've told us, but do you find, is it energetically draining? Is it heavy sometimes? Because I know that I've had conversations like that with people, and it takes a lot out of you emotionally and energetically. Have you learned to deal with that? Was it something that was initially? How do you find it?
It's never. I think I'm one of these that I'm the youngest of 6, and I'm one that's always been the calmest. When I was younger, I was just hyper. Everything was I was the best drama queen you could ever know. And then one day something happened, and I separated from my ex-wife, bless her, and it just turned my life around and said, "You know what? I've always looked at, this is that. Now I look, what's the worst thing that can happen?" So I think when things happen, I sort of look at it logically and say, what's the worst can happen there. However, sometimes it can get you. And I've had it probably in the past 2 years, 3 times, where somebody said something to me on the phones. And I've gone, right, okay. And I've gone through the whole conversation. I've put the phone down and I've walked away in the office and bawled my eyes out in front of everybody. And I mean, it could have been something really simple, something that nobody else would have ever picked up on, but something that maybe I've not expected. And it's not the emotional stuff. It's really strange. I mean, I can have a guy that I work with at the same time. You see him and he's sort of 6'2" and built like a house and everything else. But if somebody cries on the phone, he cries every time. He says, "It gets me every time." When they cry, I can't help it. And I'm not like that, because I think if we're both like that, then you can't get anywhere. It's like people shouting. As soon as somebody shouts, nobody hears. And it's the same principle. It's not even that. It's one of those things where if somebody rings up and they've lost. So I'll give you, for instance, without taking it too dark, a lady rang up and said, "I need to cancel my son's account." So, right, okay, sorry for your loss, blah, blah. I went through everything. And she then told me that the family had had a car crash. She lost all the family. that day. Literally, there was her that survived. So they'd all gone. And it wasn't that, and this is going to get me now because it does every single time I think about it. She actually turned around and said, I want my mum. And then Mum had died 20 years ago. She was sort of elderly herself. Not elderly, but she was older. She'll say that sounds wrong. And it was the fact that she wanted a mum after losing all the family. And it shows that no matter what age you are, you don't always grow up. And people expect, because you're an adult, oh, you should do this and you should be strong and, you know, you have to, you've made your bed, you lie, and this is the problem that people face. And it again, 5 years ago, my son was at university. He writes plays. He's a stand-up comedian now because his best friend in the house that they're renting committed suicide in his bedroom herself. So it took him 2 years to get over that. And then he started to write about it as well. So that's how he dealt with it. But the amount of people said, I'm not sure, and walked away and left him to it because they didn't know how to deal with it. And I think this is why it should be talked about, because it's not that people don't care. It's because people don't know how to react. And that takes me back to when I was a child, when my grandma died and my mum's best friend avoided her in the street, and she pulled her over. She says, why? She went, I didn't know what to say to you, that I might have upset you. She went, I've just lost my mum. There's nothing you can say that would upset me more, but you've upset me by avoiding me. So I think that's always stuck in my mind, that don't avoid it because people are fearful because they don't understand it, rather than that they don't care. So I think that's why I talk about it more, because men, especially, like being a physio years ago, men don't talk about it. Men are never polar.
It's interesting that both you and your son, you said, have dealt with something like that creatively. Isn't that an interesting thing to take? And that's certainly what I'll take from you talking about these things. You know, the power that creativity can have in dealing with something so difficult. And I think I had no idea that this. It's so nice to have this conversation, because I had no idea. You know, I thought to myself, Michael's going to have some really lovely things to say, and I know that he's got all these amazing things to say, but I'm really profoundly affected by what you're saying, and it's just so lovely to get this opportunity.
I always say I don't like doing any preparation for things like this, because I'm lazy and I don't really want to do preparation and stuff. But B, it's genuinely more interesting to find and to find out on the spot, and to because I'm watching your reaction while I'm listening, and I'm thinking all these things flooding through my head, all these questions, because this is not the. I knew you made jewelry. Yeah. This is not the conversation I was expecting to have, but that's brilliant though, and this is why you talk about creativity, and we're talking about dealing with serious personal issues. It brings everything back around to how we live our lives in society, doesn't it?
It does.
You go to other communities that live in different ways, where everybody maintains a lot more contact, and we have larger communities that support each other. They're there for each other. What you're describing is people who are isolated because they've lost their family, lost their friends, don't have that point of contact, but how important it is that they have someone that they can talk to. And it turns out that it's the person who looks after their TV and their internet and their phone or whatever. But we need each other, don't we? As creatures, we need each other. And generally speaking, we care about each other as a rule. Yeah. I think
absolutely. I think you do. You do see it. I mean, I was in town one time, and unfortunately, what happened is that this guy fell into the road and got hit by a car, and bless him, he had a white shell suit on, but it was covered in blood, which made it worse to look at. And I sort of ran out and got him in the recovery position, told him to call an ambulance. They called an ambulance, and they went, how did you cope with that? And I was like, well, you just got to do it. I said, it's like a fireman coming into your house and screaming, panicking, you'd panic, wouldn't you? And then I sat down, and they went, you've gone grey, and then I passed out.
Wow.
Because I deal with it afterwards. You deal with it while you deal with it, and then afterwards. And this is why when people see me, I'm very sarcastic. in a funny way. You'll know this. And I'm always having a laugh with people because I think it's easier. And my wife's taught me this. She sort of weirded me out a little bit because I'll have a laugh with anybody. I'll talk to general public or whatever. And she went up to this lady in town and said, "I love your hair." She said, "Where did you get the dye from?" Because I dye hair. I've done it for 20 years. So we dye it pink or purple. And I was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just going to tell her." She said, "I will see her." That's just, "Oh, I love that dress she's got on." And she'll just go tell people. And it's easier to make somebody smile than it is to complain. And we did it in Asda a few weeks ago. There was a girl on the till and you could see she'd had a long day.
Yeah.
And she went, £27, whatever. And I went, "No, I'm not paying you." And she looked at me really confused. And I said, "I'm not paying you." And Linda went, "Stop it." And I went, No, I'm not paying her." So she didn't know what to do. I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll do you a deal." She went, "What?" I said, "Give me a smile. You know that smile like your baby's got wind? And if you do that, then I'll pay you." And she burst out laughing and went, "That's all it took, thank you." And I gave her the money and walked away. Because you know when people are like that, and it's just usually the general public that'll make them feel like that, and you just think, just easy, just make them laugh, make them feel good. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not do that? You get what you give. You get what you give, and if you feel negative, you're going to breed negativity. You've got to force yourself, and I'm not a negative person. I can be, but I've always had the thought of, if you wake up thinking, "Can I have a bad day today?" I'll have a bad day.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. But if I say, well, it could be a bad day, but we'll see what we can do to make it not a bad day. And I think that's the difference, because then even if you get one smile from somebody or you do one positive thing for yourself or for somebody else, then it's been a good day.
I think that thing about creativity in difficult situations, I think humour is definitely...
Yeah.
You have to be careful. You have to know who, you have to be careful,
audience.
Know your audience or not. But a well-timed joke, a well-timed laugh at a difficult time is very welcome. We really do. My uncle passed away recently, and he was up in bed, and I went in, and he'd been asleep, and my auntie woke him up, and he used to always sit in front of the window in his chair. And she sat in the other chair. Yeah. And he opened his eyes and he looked at me, and he didn't have his teeth in, and we were looking pretty old and wrecked. I said, "All right, Jack, it's the first time I've seen you out of your chair in 20 years, this." Like that way, because it were. Yeah. But it was, he were on his deathbed, but it was the first time I've seen him out of his chair. So I thought, because, what else do you say to someone? And my auntie's smiling, he's buggered now and all this, and just kind of... I guess it's kind of like a directness about stuff where you're saying what it is, and you're dealing with it in a way that...
Well, they say...
What can you do? What can you do otherwise, really, in some respects? You know what I mean?
But you're talking to the person, not the people around about the person when they're sat there or laid there. And that's the difference, whether they understand or not. It's like somebody who's in a coma. You'll still talk to them, whether they can hear you or not, or can they hear you? Yeah. You don't know. Yeah. So don't do it like that. But they say laughter's the best medicine. Unless you're diabetic, then obviously insulin works better. But it's you've got to do it, and it's that thing of treating human beings as human beings, whether you understand their situation or not. I think it hit me once, actually, one story, and I was talking to a lady and said, "I've got terminal cancer." And I said, "Right," I says, all my family died of cancer. I said, "I understand how you feel." She went, "No, you don't." I said, "Right." She went, "No, you don't." She says, "I've got cancer, you haven't. I'm dying, you haven't, you're not." So, fair enough, I'll give you that. And the other one, the one that got me, that I was trying to think of, it was a gentleman in his 80s that rung up and said, "I need to transfer all my account over to my wife." And I was like, "We can't do that unless you've passed away. It's legally, it's not allowed." He said, "It's all right, because I'm going to die in 14 days anyway." He said, "I want to make sure that everything's done for her, so that I get everything sorted so she doesn't have to do anything." And I went, "Sorry?" He said, "I've got 10 to 14 days, they've told me. Got for 10 to 14. I said, "And you're spending the next 10 to 14 days dealing with your bills?" He said, "No, I'm dealing with my bills so my wife doesn't have to." So fair enough. God. And that's the thing that got me, where you'd think it'd be something, totally different that would make you... But it wasn't. It was just that thing that guy was that strong to be able to do that and turn around and say, I'm not going to be here in just over a week, but I'll do that and I'll spend my time doing that. Whereas I'd want to run through a field in my boxers and my socks. Do you know what I mean? It's everyone has to, I'm joking.
That's what you want to do.
I'm joking. Oh gosh, no! I won't do that to anybody. Not even blind people. No.
Not that field that old lady in Wales lives in.
Well, no. Can you bleep things out? No. I do have a weird sense of humour, so yeah, I try not to. I try to keep most of it to myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Creativity and art and stuff, because just remind listeners, this is our art podcast, not our bereavement podcast, bereavement special.
But it is funny how it all connects, doesn't it? The actual inspirations behind what people are making are often, far and wide. Why
and
we do what we do.
The main thing about it is, and the one thing I wanted to get across was, the way that the two connect is the fact that I do the creativity because I want to. And I'll tell you something I've never told anybody in my life.
Oh, gosh.
And it's about the creativity side of it. So I do the creativity and I make the jewellery now because I wanted to do it as a child. But because I'm old, when I was young, it was not the done thing. You don't do things like that. You go out, you work in a mill, which I did, and everything else. Oh gosh, if I'd have done, I must be highly gay and want to marry a sheep if I wanted to make jewellery at that age. Yeah. So I put it off and put it off and put it off and never did it. And the reason now is because of the job that I do. I say stuff it, and if I want to do it, I'll do it. So I think for the creativity side is I do what I want to do now, because I love doing it and I've always wanted to do it, but feared of being not disrespected, but for my parents to turn around and say, you shouldn't be doing that. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I do it. So
Michael,
both two come
beautiful.
together.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. I think you definitely should do. Everyone should do whatever it is they feel that they want to do.
Yeah, and we are lucky
a lot
that
of people don't.
I know
we
they
can,
don't. No,
though.
They
Some people can't. Some people.
That's what I love about these studios. Everybody can be themselves.
Yeah, that is a good
literally.
point.
You get different sort of people, different walks of life. But everyone's got the same goal. And it's just the fact that everybody's so great to get on with. Or if they don't want to be part of it, they can step back. And I've done that before. And I've said, leave me alone. I'm not in the mood. I don't want to play. And I've said, and they've understood that because I don't want to I need to do what I'm doing. I need to focus.
Yeah. Can I go back? Sorry, I just want to go back to the I want to go back to the hamster for a second. Your wife.
You can't go back to the hamster. The hamster's no longer there.
No, I know. I want to invoke the spirit of the hamster.
Right.
But what I was thinking about when you were saying about the hamster died and how upset your wife was, when you think how attached people get to inanimate objects, right? Obviously, anything that's living has got a personality and a character. Obviously, you're going to grieve because it's got the absence of that presence. But then when you think about how attached people get to inanimate objects, well, often just think about the amount of energy, love, focus, wisdom, the objects that we create, particularly objects of art, are a physical manifestation of all that experience, of all that life, of all that skill, of all that stuff. And so, especially things that get handed down, there's a reason why we connect. It's not, you're not connecting to the metal or whatever it is, but you're connecting to all that goes into it. And bringing it back around to what you do, I guess everything that you've absorbed as a person and as an artist and as a creative comes out then, doesn't it, in the work that you do, and that's how it all sort of connects.
And this is why I could do half an hour, I can do 10 hours and not even, and I've done it before where I've thought, right, I'm going to another half an hour and I'm done. 4 hours later, I'm looking up and going, oh, I need to have a drink or I need to get something to eat. Because it's one of those things that with the art itself, you're producing something that, and it still gets me now every time, just as I've got a bracelet in my bag for somebody now that I made. It never existed. It was never there. It was in a bottle of clear liquid and this... and now it's a physical thing that's somebody will treasure for their life.
Yeah.
That is just
magic.
Blows my mind. Every
magic,
time blows my mind. And that's what I get out of it. It is very egotistical in that way, but on the other side of it, it's you're seeing their face and you're seeing how they, you've listened to what they want. You've discussed it and said, right, okay, I get where you're coming from. It's that thing of there's different types of people. Some people will just go out and buy something or they'll don't want to know, but you'll want something that's very personal to them. And jewellery can be very personal. And what I've done as well is, and this is not plugging anything, there's a reason. When I got my wife a ring for her mum and dad's ashes, because we got them both together, which is another funny story in that, because when she carried her mum and dad's ashes, her mum was quite a big lady, but she was only 5'1", and her dad was quite slim. And when she carried her mum and dad's ashes at the crematorium, she went, "Oh, finally, my dad weighs more than my mum." and I looked at her and I was like, "What? Even I don't have that level." And she just didn't realise what she said, but she said it and it made me laugh. But yeah, so when you're in that position and you sort of supporting somebody and you're bringing it to them, it's just amazing. It really is. And again, you bring that conversation about that person. They're then talking about that person. That keeps that person alive.
And what's your favourite thing that you've made?
It has to be the bracelets.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I've got another thing that I've done for the garden, which is it charges on UV, so that when it's a heart with the inscription on, and then it's during the day it's cream and it glitters, but then at night time it just lights up bright green, so you can see it from a distance. But I also do the rings and things like that, and even cufflinks. I'm doing one for a husband and son. His sister's getting married, and they've got the mum's ashes in there because they want to be at the wedding. So they're having them as there, but I'm also doing them so that they glow at the night time. So when they're at the night time, you'll see them.
Oh, that's so.
And
sweet.
I also do a bench. It's amazing how people want to order it to sit on it, and it's probably 7-inch wide. Exactly. So you print direct onto it, so you put the photograph on, or as I make miniature paws, I put the ashes into the paws, that goes onto the actual bench, and it all goes together. That goes into the garden or wherever, onto the maybe a rockery that they've got in the garden, something like that. So they have that side of it as well. So there's, again, I like to do lots of different things for different people, because I think, going back to the beginning, when I got my wife the ring, the cheapest I could find was about £300. And I think the first thing that came to my head was what about the people that can't afford that? Why should they lose out on something like this? So what I've done is I've done it in a way that most things that I make are around £40. And if you want to pay it over 3 installments, pay over 3 installments, because I've always said, because you don't have the money, you should never be restricted on what you can have. Why can't you have a ring with your mum's ashes in because you haven't got £300? That's not fair. Life's not fair in that sense, but you should make it fair. So that's what I've done. I've done the silver stuff a lot cheaper for other people who want the silver, or they're allergic to stainless steel or titanium. But predominantly it's going to be affordable things for people that don't have that disposable income, that should get it just as much as anybody else.
Yeah.
Right, well, you're not at work now, and you are
I was gonna say the
totally
same thing.
entitled to plug your wares and tell people where to find them. And in fact, you're not leaving this room until you've totally plugged it, right?
Yeah.
That's the deal.
Yeah, so
Okay,
decent
plug
plug
away.
from you, please, Michael.
So my website will be ready on the 6th of July.
Ooh,
Ready to
launching
go.
soon.
Everything will be there. Like I say, 90% of it is going to be around £40. And it's Forever in My Thoughts. You can't miss it, because at the moment I'm making myself a wonderful t-shirt. And it's a giant tree, but rather than leaves, they're all hearts, and they're all hearts on the tree. And each one of the hearts is for one person, or for one member of the family, shall we say, whether it's a person or a pet. So yeah, Forever in My Thoughts.co.uk, and it will be as much as possible geared to it being personalised, anything being personalised. I'm up for a challenge. So if someone says, well, you make rings, can you make me this? And it's something completely different. If it's something that I can do, I'll have a go. Absolutely. Because I think it works for everybody. And if I've had some pretty obscure things people ask me for, and I've said, do you know what? And it's a bit like tattoos. I've got my tattoo. I drew it myself. It's on. A lot of people have tattoos for the story. Some people just like the picture. What I want for people to come to me is say, I want you to make me this because it reminds me of this when I were a kid, or it reminds me of my great-grandma, or whatever. Come and tell me your story. Tell me why, and let's see what we can do.
Brilliant.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Have we got one more question before we...
Do you want to be Rachel?
I do really on this occasion.
Well, you got me worried now.
I won't deliver it like Rachel does, let's be honest.
Well, do your best though.
I'll try. So, Michael, what's for tea?
What's for tea? If I tell you, I've actually got a text message from 2 hours ago, saying, I've got some milk and I've got some chicken.
Buttered chicken, milky chicken.
Milky chicken.
No. So that means I'm making tea when I get home. Because I bought an air fryer 2 years ago and she still not even knows where it is. I use it all the time. So I'm making fajitas.
Oh.
Homemade from scratch. Love
Wow.
them. I love them. Went to Mexico in January and everything's now Mexican. Everything that I make is Mexican and air fryers are amazing.
God, what a treat. That sounds great.
Making your own breadcrumbs. Yeah, just love it. Absolutely love it.
I only have to hear a brief conversation about food and I get hungry.
Yeah,
literally, my stomach is telling me now.
I'm surprised you can't hear mine as well. Yeah, it's pretty loud.
No, I can. Everyone, I just didn't want to embarrass you. Everyone who listened to it can hear it as well. So that strange noise, that was Lucas' belly.
Yeah, my belly.
Yeah. I don't know what's I'm having for my tea. Very briefly, I'm going to my mum's for tea. And I don't know what she's making. I'm going to my mum's. I'll just sit down and I'll eat what she puts on in front of me. You know.
Well, the one thing that you need to make is the easiest thing in the world, and it is absolutely gorgeous. And you can use vegetarian or chicken, whichever, but just get a bag of the Chili Heat Wave Doritos, blend them into a powder, and then use them as a breadcrumb for whatever. And it is absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, I'm going to do that.
Even on jacket potato, believe it or not.
Oh my Lord, that is a game changer.
Yeah, literally just put a tiny bit of olive oil on, pre-cook them in the microwave for 6 minutes, a tiny bit of oil, roll them in the powdered Doritos, put them in the air fryer or in the oven. Yeah, honestly, unbelievable.
Great idea. I don't know what I mean, I do.
You just said to me, why do you never know?
No, I do. I mean, I vaguely do, but again, my boyfriend's cooking tea, so I don't know. It's probably going to centre around beans.
Beans?
But not the baked bean variety, more like, black beans or something like that. A bean stew of some kind. It's what it tends to specialise in. So, something beany.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you're a vegan, aren't you? But I think, but like, as a rule, they eat things like pheasant in Cheshire normally.
Oh,
yes.
F off.
They can't spell pheasant, but they can eat it.
Oh dear.
And on that bombshell.
That bombshell.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
The thing is with this, it's our art podcast, and we don't know where it's going, do we? We're just inviting people in for a chat and stuff. But I feel like every time we talk to somebody, there's more conversations to be had with that person. I feel like we've scratched the surface here, and it's been really fascinating. I really enjoyed it, honestly.
Right. I've really enjoyed it, honestly. I didn't expect it to go the way it did. I just thought after about 10 minutes you're going to be bored and you'll cut it short.
Oh, no.
Because I'm so used to talking. I can't shut up. That's my problem. Michael talks too much.
No. Well, I mean, on a podcast, it's a proper strength. It really is, because otherwise, like you said, it doesn't make much of a podcast if no one's talking. But it's been really, really interesting and quite emotional.
Yes.
And very much food for thought.
Yeah.
Especially with the Dorito powder at the end.
Absolutely. Eat with.
I love how you round them up all really nice with a little phrase like that.
Yeah,
That's so
well,
good.
I've
It's
been
like
doing this
you
for-
do this for
I
a living.
I know. I know. Yeah.
All right then. Well, you end us.
Yeah. End.
Our